Hello and moin moin ladies and gentlemen, Donspektor here with another review. And today for you I have the Kinera Celest, or Celeste, not sure how to pronounce it again. But yeah, today we are taking a look at one of Kinera's medium priced offerings. Clocking in at like $160 give or take. On sale it's like 120 or something like that. And yeah, this is a 1DD 6BA offering. And today we check out that this one actually can and can't. First, as usual, package and accessories. That's it. I do like the style of this. Unfortunately, no graph at the back. And I do prefer this very much over the weird anime girl optics. Definitely more prefer something stylized like this. I think this is a crane and yeah, it's looking pretty chic to me. It's also easy to open. And then you get greeted by something like this here, also looking very premium. Opening it again, very easy. And then you get greeted by already some accessories here. Here you have the manual with some additional background information. We have a, I'm not sure if this is like a keychain thingy or something. Also actually looking pretty good. And then beneath here is the carrying case, and here would be the IEMs inside. Let's quickly check out the carrying case. That's the case. It is actually rather chunky, so you can see here. It is unfortunately, as you can see, also a bit squishy, but actually not too bad at all. And the zipper, while color matched, is on the corners. Sometimes here, this corner, not the smoothest. It's overall okay, but yeah, one corner here is not the smoothest to open. Opening it here reveals there's nice net here, so you can store your accessories. And here we already see the accessories for a cable. And then tip-wise, we do get actually a very nice selection here. This is 3 set of tips. This is some silicone with the, I think, smaller diameter. This is with the wider diameter. No, the other way around, sorry. This is the wider diameter. This is... And then we get the ear tips here. And yeah, we actually do get 3 nice sets here. First, this is foam tips here coming in M and L. I like to see those. Then these are the wider outlet tips, I think. Let me quickly open them and just check it out for us. Yep, those are the wider outlet tips, also S, M and L. And these are the smaller outlet tips, also coming in S, M and L. There's no like nice tip in here, quotes. But these are actually, yeah, normal tips and they should be working fine for you. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of package and accessories. Let's go to the IEM and the cable. And I think today I'll be starting off with the cable. As you already saw, this comes with a replaceable connector at the bottom. And this here comes with 3.5 and I think 4.4 Pentacon. Let me just double check here that I'm not telling anything bullshitty. Yep, that's 4.4 Pentacon. And one thing I didn't particularly enjoy about this is all plastic, as you can see here. I have had other replaceable connectors that definitively looked more premium. And then starting at the bottom here, I mean, yeah, this looks nice, as you can see, very shiny, very fingerprint collecty. And yeah, it's also not the best to grip because while this is slightly textured or slightly contoured, it's really ever so slightly and it's still very slippery. Also lacking here the strain release, there's really no strain release at all. But fortunately, on top of that, we get this nicely twisted 4 thicker cores here. And those remind me of some better over-ear cables that I have had here. And overall, while not being the absolute smoothest, I have to confess, it is absolutely non-problem cable for me in day-to-day life. When I unboxed this, I was like, okay, it's not the super smooth, but it doesn't matter in day-to-day life. Like, if you just get it, like, kind of straight enough now here, like this, as you can see, it's straight enough in everyday life, and I haven't noticed it much. Also, it feels, yeah, robust enough, because, yeah, the 4 cores are not so thin. And then the splitter here, again, is very reflective, fingerprint collecting. And after, on top of that, the chin slider, yeah, really, as you can see, really, it's like, it's sliding down by me, just slightly wiggling it, not working at all. More on top here, as you can see, the 2 cores that go to your ears is actually very, I would say, textured. And that also means actually the cable here, as you can see, on top of the ear hooks is also heavily textured. And that can lead to pressure hotspots on your ears. It doesn't have to, because yes, this cable here, as you can see, the bending radius is like medium to medium big. So probably will not be too bad. But if you have big ears, this might create pressure hotspots here or here. Yeah, rubberization here, as you can see, is medium thick. It's not super springy, as you can see. It's springy though, and yeah, overall feels relatively solid. And yeah, then last but not least, the connector here, as you can see, terminates in a standard 2-pin connector here. And unfortunately, they missed the color coding here. There's no color coding going on whatsoever. And that's a bit of a missed opportunity. Because this here is transparent, you could easily add some color coding, but they didn't. The L&R indicators are printed here in white. I'm not a great fan of white on silver shiny. It's just not that readable outside. Really something darker is better, or yeah, color coding even better than that. And yeah, overall, I think this cable is pretty decent. I like what it comes with 2 terminations, and well, it's smooth enough, but it's also not the greatest. And as was also apparent in my unboxing with this one, the actual bending radius of both sides here, as you can see, is different. So this one is definitively smaller, while this one is bigger. Yeah, that's how it is. So definitely not great, and it might make us question how the QC is for this one. But it's just slightly different bending radius, so not much of an issue at all. And then we come to IEM Build here. Let me quickly remove my tip. And as you can see here, you can actually see inside this IEM. You can see the internals, and I really like this optics overall. Like, I like to just have it a bit frosted, so I'm not seeing everything, but I know that there are some internals in here. And yeah, overall IEM Build, I mean, semi-custom shell, it's one resin piece. There's really nothing to complain here. For the price point, it's really well built, and I really see no criticism whatsoever. 2-pin connector here is not color matched, but seems to be integrated. And yeah, the mesh here in the front also seems to be integrated well. And really, I see absolutely no complaints in terms of build with this one. Next, bringing us to comfort and fit. And before I throw in measurements, I mean, you can see in my hands, it's a chunky boy. And yeah, in real life, it actually is pretty damn chunky. It is among the, I want to say, biggest third of all IEMs I've ever had here. So definitely, if you have smaller ears, this might not be good for you. But if you have average sized ears and you get a small tip, for me, the SpinFit Omni or the Velvet TWS, really good choices to me. Well, because this is, as you can see also here in the video, it's not aggressively angled, only ever so lightly angled. We have some contouring from semi-custom shell shape, but not too strong of a contouring. And yeah, my nozzle is relatively thick with, I think I noted 6.4 millimeters. It's not that long. And yeah, with a shorter tip, it really fits me really nicely. Like really SpinFit Omni or Velvet TWS. Like I almost don't notice it in my ear because yeah, the semi-custom shell works really well. If you have bigger ears, you might want to not use SS, maybe S or MSS and tip. But yeah, for smaller ears, definitely recommend SSS and tip. And yeah, if you have actually small ears, yeah, I think this might be just a bit too big. It's definitely a chunky IEM, and yeah, it won't work for everybody. So, yeah, after tackle that, let's talk about isolation, and I can make this short. This is a relatively big shell, it's semi-custom, and it basically isolates well enough for all situations. I would say it isolates above average, good, if you get the right tip and the right insertion. So again, with SpinFit Omni for me, this was well isolating, but with some longer tips that I had used with this originally, so the liquid silicone comes to mind, it was a bit too long and didn't isolate that well. But with a shorter tip for me, nicely isolating, and really it's well enough for all situations, including louder roads, but there again I would recommend using foam tips. And then next, drivability. This is an hybrid IEM with 4BA with a 2x crossover, and it has 27 ohms at 105 decibels. So that is definitely more than most other hybrid IEMs here. And yeah, I have to confess, in day-to-day life, I think you actually do need a tiny bit more power than the Apple dongle gets you. It definitely gets loud enough with the Apple dongle, like I would say like 70 decibels easy possible. But I do think you do lose some detail with this. I think it actually scales slightly, and definitely staging is improved if you up the power a bit. So in terms of percentage here, I would say like 70% is what the Apple dongle gets you, maybe 80 if you're generous, and then upping the power a bit to something like the BTR5 or the UP5 definitely gets you most of what this is capable, like at least 90%. And actually, I liked it a tad better on my desktop setup, which is, I don't know, like 2 watts or something like that, but that really is not required here. I like it most with that, probably because it's also measuring the cleanest. Bringing me to the core chapter of all of my reviews, sound. Yes, general sound characteristics first, as usual. Well, you can see it by graph now. dang, this thing is V-shaped. I would actually use the description heavily V-shaped for once, because really there's a lot going on here. I think in the following I will mostly compare this to one of my favorites in the same price bracket, which would be the Supermix 4. And I mean, yeah, let's check out the graph here. Check the, I think this is a 13K peak here, check that out, how huge that is on graph. And now we compare it again to my friend Supermix 4. You can see it's way brighter in the entire treble basically. And that means this thing comes off in its entire treble region as bright. There's no denying that. Really everything is bright here. Lower treble, mid treble, upper treble, everything is bright. But now comes the kicker. If you just go by graph, you would think this sounds unpleasantly bright because really there's a lot of things going on. In reality though, it's one of those cases where the graph actually is not indicate how it sounds to my ear. It sounds way smoother when it measures. That means the peak you can see here at like, I think it's like 6K or 5.5K, actually is not pronounced at all to my ear. It just doesn't exist. So it's very smoothed over, same as like 3 and 4K. And then the actual peaks at like 8K here or like 8.5K and then 13K, they come more of as a plateau to my ear. So that means while this is definitively very bright, it also comes off as very smooth at the same time. And I actually do enjoy the treble department here for, I think, most of my library at all. Although keep in mind, because this is not the most airy usage here of BAs, or it's not an EST or planars, you do lack the uppermost registers to my ear. Let me again quickly use my mouse and check out the graph. Yeah, it seems to dip here at like 14K and then comes up after that. To my ear, actually, this is about correct. I would say like 13, 14K, the plateau ends and then it just completely disappears. To my ear though. So there might be a bit more air to be had in some frequencies, but it's absolutely passable at this price point. And interestingly, let me also note, it has a light grain going on the overall treble, and you might be able to pinpoint some BA timbre, but really it's very coherent and for the amount of treble you have here, very smooth for that. And yeah, some examples here. I liked Hans Zimmer's soundtracks. I liked Ovane, I'm not sure how to pronounce him, it's like a fusion jazz artist, Metallica, Iron Maiden, Chakanaka, Nightcrawler, or soundtracks from instance Cyberpunk, Blade Runner, and Automata all came off as very nicely pronounced. And well, without being too bright, right? So it's one of those cases where I actually enjoy the bright signature here, and if you are up to that, I think you won't have an issue with the Relentless at all. Lower treble though, I mean, I think this is where some people might have a problem. Again, the 5.5K peak was not pronounced to my ear, but it might be for you. And that means this could come off as a bit harsh here. Again, to my ear, really have to stress this so often with these treble reviews here. Really, it's very smooth overall. There isn't much I can criticize here. But judging by graph, I really assume it could be that you do get a 5K peak with this. And yeah, that won't be so nice. Upper mids, as you can see, well pronounced. I think it's like 11 decibels of pinner gain here. And just by graph, the Supermix comes off as a bit brighter at 2.8K. But in reality, I have to say, Supermix is about on par to my in the lower treble in the upper mid department here. And that means you have a very nice clarity for female vocals. It's definitively a bit forward, you could say overall, but still nicely balanced in the overall scheme of things. And that, yeah, I mean, sorry, we have to tackle it now, the mids, and you can see, yeah, I mean, this is, it's super warm. It's one of those things where I really am not up for this. This is just not my signature. It just drowns the mids, and while the BAs definitively do take care of the mids here to my ear, and that means they are not super recessed, they are recessed, and they are definitely not playing the star of the show. And one of my favorite artists, Linkin Park, the vocalist here tends to be a bit lost in the mix. And granted, Linkin Park is not the best mixed stuff, but still, it's just a bit lost in the mix. And that also means lower mids are heavily pronounced, and you need to like this. That means, for instance, that bass guitars come off as very strongly pronounced, and even some bass notes, while being, now we are basically rolling directly to bass here, while being very nicely, I would say, like audible, or by having a very full body to it. Yeah, unfortunately, they do lack tightness, they do lack control, they are not as nimble as other IEMs that I've heard, and it's generally, yeah, it's a very warm signature, and honestly, if you want to go for a warm signature, I think the bass shelf latest, let's say latest should start at 350 Hz. Everything below that is kinda okay, better would be 300 or 250 or 200 Hz, but 350 Hz is, I think, the absolute max where bass shelf should start, and this goes all the way to mids, and it's just too much. And that also means really, it doesn't really have character, doesn't really punch hard, and doesn't really give you the satisfying oof that happens if really a bass hit kicks. It's just not the case here. And even worse, if you check the measurements here, it's not that very visible, but yeah, the sub bass is only average. That means on a bit louder volumes that I usually listen to while critically listening. I mean, my benchmark track, Interstellar's Mountains, there's a bass note that starts at like 2 minutes 10 and goes all the way to 2 minutes 16. So from like, I would say, let's say 60 Hz to 20 Hz. Here it's completely lost at like 2 minutes 14. You do get a light hint that there's like a simmering at the background, like ever so lightly at 2 minutes 14, but then it's completely gone. Not even 2 minutes 14 and a half. So really, if we're generous, we can give it 2 minutes 14 here, and that means it's just not a nice overall bass IEM, like bass sounding IEM. It's too bleedy. It's not well defined, and it's not even technical and bad. When I heard the VEX on CanJam 2 years ago, while that thing is also absolutely a monster, well, that bass driver at least had technicalities going on, and this here just is not the case. So I'm a bit disappointed by bass. I mean, especially when you see this graph here. And then coming to our technicalities, soundstage, layering and imaging. And I think starting off strong here. I think in this department, this is actually doing pretty well. It does have a decent soundstage to my ear, and there's some width and some height to be had here. And while not being huge, it is definitely above average overall. And especially here, I noticed the Cyberpunk soundtrack, there's a song called Extraction Action that usually doesn't come off as like staged with IEMs. Well, here it had some actually staged to be had, and I did like the presentation. But again, let me stress, this mostly only worked for me for more like soundtrack related stuff, it's more synthesizer based. Fusion Jazz, for instance, that I also usually use as a benchmark track, wasn't that wide sounding, but still there was some soundstage here. And that combined with the layering, which is like, I would say 50-50, 50% it's only 3 layers, but the other 50% you actually get 5 layers here. And yeah, it really depends on how well the song is mixed to my ear here. And that means, yeah, it's for the price point also pretty well done in terms of layering. And yeah, last but not least, imaging here. This might be one of the weakest aspects of this IEM. While not being bad at all, like really you can pinpoint where things coming off. Sometimes I actually do struggle to make out directionality cues. So while I wouldn't recommend this for gaming heavily, I think you can absolutely get used to it. And it's one of those cases, again, if you're just used to the transducer, you can game with everything. But this wouldn't be an IEM where I would say, oh, the imaging is amazing on first glance, or even on second one. And when we're coming to the next technicality section here, which is separation, dynamic, and coherence. And positive first things, this comes off as relatively coherent. There isn't much going on in the treble department. I would say this actually sounds like BA timbre now. It's said like lightly, you can probably pinpoint it. There's a light brain going on. But other than that, there is really not much I can complain here. Dynamics, while not being the greatest, actually is also not bad at all. And yeah, I wouldn't really, I can't really say anything negative about the technicality department here. One thing though, I will note for the treble, the overall treble signature it has here, for the amount I mean, this is actually sounding, again, surprisingly organic. Like really, it sounds way more smooth when it measures, and it sounds bright, but it doesn't sound like overly bright. And actually, I think sometimes it sounds a bit, let's just say sanitized, a bit over smoothed in the treble department, even though it's this bright. And that means I think most people will perceive the treble here as, yeah, pretty damn coherent, especially in combination with the mids. And then just the bass is, yeah, a bit of an outlier because it just lacks some technicalities here. And yeah, that brings me to the verdict. And yeah, let me again stress, while I'm personally not into V-shaped signatures, especially strong V-shaped signatures like this one, I have to confess this is one of the few V-shaped IEMs where I actually had a good time listening to it. If the mix is just right and the instrument lines and vocals are not too complex, Relentless is definitively fun sounding IEM. Again, I would prefer my mids to be smooth and bass shaft to be below 350 Hz. But if you are into a market for a V-shaped signature IEM, I think this is actually a pretty good choice there. But you also need to keep in mind, well, again, as I said before, this is a very big IEM, so if you have smaller ears, this might not work for you as well. But yeah, overall, especially with the organic treble representation that it has, I do think this could be a good secondary IEM for you. If you already have a primary IEM that is nicely tuned, but it's not like clean mids and not too much treble going on, I think this could be a good addition to your library. Or maybe even a tertiary IEM here if you have something that it's already bright. Yeah, this one could be a decent V-shaped option here. I'm not sure if I will keep it personally though, because I have a good amount here. But I do see why people do like this, and as I said, like I could give it a slight rake if you are into V-shaped IEMs. I think this is actually a pretty decent implementation there. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Questions, recommendations, or criticisms? Please leave a comment. Donspektor out.